All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to the interview series. I'm here with artist Gabriel Schwepler. It's an amazing thing right now. It's happening because we didn't have an interview like this for about 4 years. But during all these past years, we've still been working together. He's still been helping me to deliver great artwork for this game heading into Language Land. He did the troll, the goblin, tree beast, and the backs of the cards for heading into Language Land 1. And ever since that game came out, we've stayed in touch. And he's working on many new pieces for the second edition of the game. He's a critical member of the team. I really appreciate his work. So we're back here for another interview. We thought it was high time. And I just want to ask him some questions about his artistic process at first. So if you're into the artwork or maybe you're an artist yourself, I think you'll really like that. And then we're going to segue into talking about one of the characters he helped me to bring to life, and that is Zune, who's a watercolor, like a water element wizard. So, welcome, Gabriel. It's been 4 years since the last interview, and the first question is, how's your artistic journey been going? How about the evolution of your skills? What new things have you been learning and trying in the recent years?
Yeah, hey Matt. Yeah, I really appreciate you continuing to involve me in this over the past 4 years, and we'll talk about it later. But a lot of creative producers have switched to AI, and you've continued to hire real artists, and I really appreciate that. So yeah, a lot's happened over the past 4 years. I have started my degree in digital animation. I picked digital animation not necessarily because that's the thing that I am 100% sure I want to do long term, but that was an area where I thought I had the most to learn. And one of the areas that I've improved in the most over the past few years, something called thumbnail sketches. So thumbnail sketches are where you draw anywhere from like 5 to 50 tiny sketches to see if a design or composition looks good on a small scale before you go in and do the actual the full detailed version.
Mhm.
uh, for me, my skill in realistic lighting and texturing, it actually evolved a long time before my skill in design. So a few years ago, I'd make these really uncanny pictures where they have realistic details but really bizarre proportions. So
Mhm.
now I feel like my skill in the design and composition area is sort of catching up to my skill in realistic rendering.
Mhm.
And then the other thing I've been learning is a lot of 3D modeling and animation software. I
Mhm.
actually started that when I was 9, so I've been doing it for a long time. Um, but I mostly stopped for a while. I've been picking it back up again and learning new things during my time in college.
That's really cool. So thumbnail sketches and the computer animation skills, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, it sounds like you said that's a place where you can grow, and it's a great complementary skill set to the other talents you already have. Yeah, that's really exciting. And we'll see that too with Zoom because I think that's the first time you brought that in to help with perspective and get a sense of that. So I got to see that, and we'll show it here in a minute. The
Yeah,
next
I think
question.
both those skills you will be able to see in Zune.
Yeah,
Sorry,
that's going
continue.
to be fun. Um, so this is a question I don't know if I really talked about it a lot in the last interview, but it's something I'm really interested in with all creatives, and that is I wanted to know about how you work. So, like, what days of the week do you like to do your art? What time of day? How long do you usually spend at it? And what's your environment like? Do you have some background music or tea or coffee, or is there a certain place you have to be? What does that all look like for you?
So during the school year, when I'm pretty busy, it's kind of just whatever time I can scrape together on a Saturday afternoon. I'll just sit down and work on, whatever commission I have for a while. But occasionally during the summers, I'll be able to work on digital painting commissions full time. And when I'm doing that, often I'll go to the library just to get out of the house
Mm.
because being in the house can be a bit distracting for me. And then I'm generally able to put in about 6 hours at first before I start getting super drained. And during those 6 hours, like every hour or so, I'll get up and I'll walk around. So there's a lot of taking little breaks in between work because creative work can be really draining. During a lot of it, I will listen to an audiobook or a podcast or something.
Really?
But every once in a while, I'll pause that because I realize like I'm starting to lose focus, especially during the ideation phase. Like if I'm reading one of your emails and thinking about the character that you're describing and trying to imagine them and then doing sketches of them. During that, I can't really listen to anything. I have to be focused full time on the art. But then when I'm just painting, adding in the shadows and the details, again, that stuff is sort of second nature to me. So I can listen to an audiobook while doing that, and it actually helps me to focus
That's
during
cool.
that phase.
Yeah, those are some insights there because I never imagined an artist at a library, but obviously that could work perfectly well. And yeah, about the music. So when you're in the conceptualization phase, the ideation phase, it doesn't really work. And but when you're just carrying out the work, so to speak, it can be there. The music can be there, and I found that to be true for me as well with card game design. When I'm trying to bring out new ideas, um, yeah, it doesn't work to really have anything distracting going on. It has to be really quiet, or maybe some background like nature sounds or something that are natural, but nothing too crazy. So you said you can do like 6 hours. So yeah, you're kind of in like a flow state there. And anything about the time of day? Do you prefer like morning, afternoon, evening?
So I prefer to get started early.
Right.
Um, I can definitely focus in the morning. Mid to late afternoon, I am starting to become pretty useless. I totally lose focus. And so generally then I'll put it down and go do something else for a while. But then generally I can pick it back up again in the evening and get a couple more hours of work in then.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's the same for me too. I like to wake up. I don't usually have breakfast. I like to work till lunch, when I'm able to. These kinds of moments are rare for me as a father, but flow state all morning and then take a break. And like you too, I like to have breaks just about every hour. I need a short break to stretch my body and move around. And then lunch will be the first big break. And then if I'm in the mood, I might be able to do an hour or two in the afternoon, but not always. In the evening, if I'm in the mood, maybe I can carry on an hour or two, not always. So, afternoon, evening is maybe I can add on a little more if I'm really in a good flow and things are working and there's a little bit more that I want to get done because sometimes I don't really want to leave things incomplete when I'm kind of midstream on something. I want to, put a bow on it for the day. So I might do a few more hours. But it's remarkable how similar that is for both of us, carrying out the creative work.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Um, so we touched on AI a little bit, I think, the last time we chatted. And of course, AI is like going crazy in an exponential way. It seems to be permeating every single thing in the world. So I wanted to touch base with you on that and see where your thoughts are on that now, especially for new artists, I think, who are even younger than you. I mean, you're really young, but just imagine like maybe a teenager who's thinking they want to develop a career in art and just AI is in everything. Even if you, I mean, even in programs that you wouldn't expect when they update, now AI features are already inside of it. And maybe you didn't even really want it. It's just like it's coming at you from every angle. And so, what do you think about it? And how would you advise people work with it or not? Or
Yeah, I have a lot of thoughts on AI. It's something on the one hand, I hate thinking about it. On the other hand, I find it
you have
interesting to
to.
think. So I'll say, well, first, like it's here and it's not going away anytime soon, as far as I know.
Yeah.
Um, I have not used what I'd consider AI in any of my art, but I wouldn't tell anyone that they can't. what I would say is AI is not going to make anyone a better artist. So using AI, sometimes it can feel like it's sort of filling in your weak spots, filling in the skills that you don't have. Um, right, for a creative person who doesn't really have drawing skills, maybe they'll go to whatever AI, generative AI they choose, and type something in, and it'll feel like their ideas are coming to life. But then at the same time, they're not really making the decisions. On how exactly that image ends up looking.
Yeah.
So to me, it's always about creative decisions. So anytime you let the automated process do something that you don't fully understand, you're losing creative control.
Mm.
Um, and this is interesting for me because I work in two mediums. One is or two primary mediums. One is digital painting, and that really closely simulates physical painting. So
Mm.
pretty much, every pixel on that final canvas is something I added on there, right? Every brush stroke is something I did. Um, the other medium I do is digital sculpting slash 3D modeling, 3D animation. And that's a totally different process. It feels much more like creating something out of clay and then painting that thing in 3D and then adding lights. And then there's some sort of a photography element to creating that final image. And the computer renders out the final image. So it does all the physics to calculate here's the light, here's the shadow, all of that. It does the physics for that and renders that out. But to me, I still have complete creative control over that process. I define everything about the material, everything about the lighting,
Mhm.
the camera angle, the shape of the object that I'm showing.
Mhm.
And so it actually ends up taking about the same amount of time. I remember I did these two portraits one time, these really detailed portraits, and one was a digital painting. And it took me about 50 hours. And then I went and did a 3D modeled digital portrait, and it also took me about 50 hours. It's totally different process, but
Mhm.
same amount of time because I'm making the same number of creative decisions.
Mhm.
So, any artist starting out thinking about how to use AI, there might be some ways you can use it in a beneficial way, but I would definitely advise against using it as a crutch because there are always going to be people in the industry looking to hire people who not just can create an image that looks a certain way, but who understand why it looks the way it does, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
People want artists who understand what all the different types of lighting do, what kind of story they tell.
Yeah.
And if you're just using AI as sort of a filler to fill in stuff that
Yeah,
you
you're
don't
saying like
understand,
no shortcuts. Yeah, don't
that
take
doesn't make you a
shortcuts.
good employee.
Yeah, and I really like the subtle insight you have there, which is focus on the creative decision making, because it's sort of like, you could evaluate through the use of the different AI tools. If I make this choice to use AI for this thing, this function, how much creative decision making or how much creative power did that just take away from me? And that could maybe evaluate how much or how to engage with AI. Like if you just
Yeah.
type in a prompt and it generates the image, well, it just took basically everything away. But there's going to be
Mhm.
all kinds of ways to just use it just a little bit. And
Yeah.
maybe a lot of your creative power and decision making is still there, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it would be less of a negative thing at that point.
Yeah. Certainly.
I'd love to talk about your future goals when it comes to your artistic skills and also your business. I mean, as a art, like an entrepreneur artist out there online doing commissions.
Yeah. So I'm about to finish my college degree, and I am sort of hoping to get just a full-time job somewhere in the future. The areas that I've looked at are concept art, 3D modeling, book illustration, or what I'm doing for you, which is game illustration. And those are fairly different fields, but I really enjoy all of those areas. So I'd be open to a job in any of those areas. Um, I there's some things I really like about being more entrepreneurial, but then there are other ways where like just not having as consistent of an income can be stressful.
Hmm.
So my current idea is that hopefully I can get a full-time job for a while, and then after that maybe I can branch out and do more of my own thing. And I would love to do some sort of creative direction in the future.
Hmm.
I don't know exactly what that would look like, but for me, I've realized as an artist, I care way more about the story and the characters and the story world than I do about what medium I'm using. I've used lots of different media and I really enjoy almost all of them.
Hmm.
The media is not actually a big deal to me. It's more about what I'm doing with it. So I'd love to do some sort of creative direction in the future.
Hmm. That's cool. So that's sort of the business, financial side of things. And how about your artistic skills? What do you want to work on? What new things do you want to try?
I guess I want to continue to improve in just the way that I visualize fantasy worlds, stuff like that. I want to get better at creating unique ideas, but also ideas that are connected to a bigger whole. So this is why I love working on your game so much. You've got this intricate story behind every character, and I
Yeah.
really love being a part of making that and making an image that's not just a standalone image that looks good on its own, but something that is connected to the story. I really want to get better at that type of world building through my art.
Yeah, me too, as a matter of fact, because what I've realized is, the conceptualization stage, that's a lot more important than I ever realized. Like that's where everything starts from, right? So if you have a
Yep.
really thought out, rich concept, that's going to translate into everything that comes next. If my concept, if my idea is weak that I share to the artist, well, they're going to execute on that perfectly from a technical standpoint. Their artistry is going to be perfect, but the finished product maybe isn't good because the concept wasn't that good, and that would be my fault, not theirs.
Yep.
So the conceptualization part of it is so important. And actually, artists, including yourself, often help to make that part better as we kind of go through it. But yeah, conceptualization is incredibly important. That to come up with really unique and powerful ideas. It's important.
Yeah,
Um,
I've really loved working with your ideas, and it's actually grown me a lot as an artist to see the way you do storytelling through the ideas that you bring me. So I've really appreciated working with you because that's actually been growing me in that way.
That's cool. Yeah, actually, so I made some games in the past really without much story behind them, but I always, as I was designing the game, I was imagining stories. And then I thought, well, why don't I write some stories too? I enjoy creative writing. And then I realized that it basically brought a richness to the game. So now I always write stories first, so I have an idea about characters and places. And then I have those ideas to share with the artist. But it's always a matter of the time and energy you have too, because I realize that I don't have all the time in the world. So sometimes I have to draw my conceptual, sometimes there's always ways it could be better, but sometimes you have to draw things to a conclusion and move on to the next step, bring the project to a point where you finish it and put it out. Um, but yeah, I always have the stories going on. And I think people can feel that when they see the artwork and see the game and everything. So how can people reach you if they want to get some work done with you?
Um, I've got a website. It is schweplerart.com,
Okay.
just my last name, art.com. and then I've got my contact on there. I used to have well, I still have listings on Etsy.com. That's where you found me originally. Um, yeah, the listings are still there, but they're hard to find because I have not been advertising them as much. The main reason for that is that that is one of those sites where AI art has sort of taken over most of the commission based
Yeah, it's everywhere. Yeah.
art stuff. So
Yeah.
so yeah,
It's gonna happen a lot.
website schweplerart.com. I've got
Right on.
contact information on there as well as a portfolio and other details.
Cool. And I'll put that info again in the description of this
Thanks.
video. So let's get into the character of Zune. And actually, before we do that, quick recap on Gabriel's artwork that he did for the last edition of the game. Can you see this, Gabriel? The
Yes.
screen share? Okay, great. So he did the tree beast, the goblin, the troll, the backs of the cards, and now we're going to go on to talk about Zune, who comes from the deep sea. I had an idea to do a deep sea sort of octopus or squid-like wizard, and he decides to leave the deep sea. He senses a war's coming. He wants to join the wizards on land and fight with them, basically. So I was thinking a little bit about what deep sea creatures are like at first and what their colors are like. And so I had these two pictures in the folder just to think about their colors. We knew he was going to have multiple limbs. And so I suggested the idea to Gabriel, and we started to get some sketches from Gabriel. Can you still see the screen share? Is this your sketches now? I just want to
Yes.
make sure that's
Yes.
working okay. All right. So I hit you up with the idea for Zoom. We knew he had multiple limbs. He was going to be strong, tall, like deep sea style coloration and body features. So what were sort of your first thoughts going through the sketches? And I can always flip to like the next one if you want me to. I've probably got I selected about 15 images along the whole length of the process. But these are some of the sketches. So what was going through your mind and how do you do your sketch work typically?
Yeah. So my first thought with these was I wanted to make something that looked unique, but also compelling. It's always difficult to make these sort of somewhat human fantasy characters because you want to portray them in a way that it doesn't look just weird and goofy, right? There's some designs that can just instantly look silly, and sometimes it's what you want, but that's certainly not what we were going for with this one. So I wanted to make a face that was stern and you could just tell this is a person who's worthy of respect. And that's why those first sketches that you see on the top there, they look very human. And basically, what I was doing there was literally just trying to portray this person if they were a human, what might they look like? And then from there, I sort of added on some of
Hmm.
the fantasy creature aspects to the face.
So some more sketches along the way. Things are getting, we brought in multiple limbs. You kind of got the profile. I feel like I remember you saying something about the profile because that wasn't exactly, I think, the perspective we were going to have him in, but you were saying like I just want to see the how the profile of the head looks.
Yeah, yeah.
And also
I
the
think
profile of the body, like he wasn't going to be that way in the scene. I think we already knew that already, but seeing how the limbs worked and how the back was so powerful, I mean, that was cool to see.
yeah, figuring out how to fit all six of those arms on his back, that was a bit of a challenge because I didn't want a super elongated body.
Yeah,
Um, and there are lots of designs that have like beings with four limbs, but
yeah,
six limbs, that's a lot. So I was trying
yeah.
to figure
It's
out how to fit them all on in a way that that made sense.
Yeah, that's neat how they kind of overlap each other there. And I like some of the aspects of the head that you started to develop there. So then, any words about this one? Just kind of
Yeah,
experimenting.
so experimenting with poses in this one and some of the following ones. One thing that I was experimenting with, yeah, probably shows more in this image here. One thing I was experimenting with was how to get all those hands to register as his hands, because there's so much intention and personality in what hands are doing.
Mhm.
It's like there's this direct link between the mind and the hands, and we can see it's almost like you express your thoughts with your hands, like we do sometimes. We gesture with our hands while we're talking,
Right.
and I didn't want these hands to be just sort of like lifeless appendages sticking off the side. I wanted to show that like each one of these hands um, is connected to his mind and
Mhm.
being directed by his will. And you see on the bottom right here, I have each of I have all the hands sort of paired off, right? So the top two hands are have one pose, and then the next two hands have a pose together, and then the bottom two hands have a pose together, because
Mhm.
it's so hard for the human mind, like to take in something that's actually new. Like we always
Mhm.
have to interpret new concepts in the context of stuff we already recognize. And so if I had different hands just interacting with random other hands, it would have just been complete chaos to look at.
Yeah, I think that the idea for multiple limbs, it challenged us because, and especially you, because each arm position and each hand position and the fingers had to be considered. And so it's almost like having now you got six jobs to
Mhm.
do because you got to think
Yeah.
about each arm and
Yeah.
each hand. So that was tricky. And then as we went along, we figured out a way, just to back up one step, it's extra hard too because we have an idea of the scene and the pose for the body. So, like you were experimenting here with different looks for the arms, but his body wasn't necessarily the way it was going to be in the scene. So we might find some ideas here in the way the arms and hands look that we like, but then if we're going to put him in the scene the way I envisioned, it's they may have to change and it's not going to work anymore. So you did a lot of sketches, you put a lot of thought into this, and I
Mhm.
realized the problem too when you told me about it. And then somewhere along the way, we figured out a good idea of how to handle it. And that was to let his hands levitate some water blobs with little animals inside. Let's go ahead to that. So then and this is something, once we hit upon it, we were like, oh, this is going to be great. And I remember you telling me that this helps me to solve the problem because each hand has a purpose. It has something it can be focusing on. And obviously, the magical powers are coming from his mind and his thought. So all the limbs and hands now have like that clear intention. But
Yeah, yeah. I mean, Zunvo, he's such a purposeful character. Like he's not the kind of guy who's just going to be chilling in a hammock, hands flopped all over, right? We have to show like sort of the gravity of just who he
Mhm.
is. And so, yeah, having each hand doing something, I feel like that really was able to show his character a lot more. And also, it just adds so much to the world to have all these levitating fish. It adds to his character as a sea
Yeah.
wizard, and also just the magic of this world that you're creating.
Yeah, I like it because he's training his powers, but he's also not hurting the sea life, and he's going to put him back down in the end. And it expands the world because you made different types of sea life in each bubble, so that was fun. I think I remember too, a little side note here. I think I remember maybe just a quick little sentence I put in there, like he's going to have a robe, right? And you were like, "Yeah, I'm doing it without a robe or without clothing at first because I want to understand like the
Yeah,
anatomy." Am I remembering this right?
yeah,
Because I was
yeah. It's
thinking, I
always
was like in my mind, I'm not like an artist, and I was thinking, you don't have to worry about the muscle and he's going to be wearing clothes. But then you're like, no, no, we got to
Yeah.
understand, the pose
You
and the body
always
and
have to understand what you're drawing.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, this ties back to what I was saying with AI. Like if you add stuff in that you don't understand, maybe it'll look okay, but it's very likely that there was a better thing that you could have done if you had understood it.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and yeah, I've for the past 10 years, I've always tried to understand what I'm drawing. I think it's so
Mm,
important to understand, like,
I
yeah,
like
just
that.
what's behind everything. What is making stuff look the way it does.
Hmm. So we developed the idea that he was going to be training in a pool of water, and he's a watercolor, so he can control water. And let's go on to the next scene here. So this is where Gabriel came back to me and said, "Hey, I'm doing this 3D modeling stuff, and I think this can help us because I had told him already I kind of wanted the perspective to be from above because another wizard overlooking a ridge sees him training, and that's kind of where he's discovered. And I wanted to do that perspective. I didn't want to just do it straight on or from the side. And that's tricky to do. Think about it again, guys, with all those limbs and hands. This was a lot of work for Gabriel. So the 3D modeling helps because and I'm sure Gabriel, you can explain it better in a minute, but I'm assuming you can kind of rotate this around from any angle and then see which angle is best, and then go illustrate it. But tell us about this modeling.
Yeah, exactly. The thing about 3D modeling is takes a bit longer to make the model because you have to create it from all angles. It's more like just sculpting something out of clay. But then once
Mm,
you have it, you can view it from any angle.
hmm,
And in the past, I've actually done this type of thing out of physical clay.
hmm.
Just take a piece of clay and then take photos of that from different angles. It was a bit easier to do it digitally
Oh,
this
cool.
time. And this represents a bit of a shift in my perspective because a while ago, like quite a while ago, maybe 10 years ago, I was always concerned about cheating with my art. I didn't want to cheat, right? I was like, okay, I don't want to trace this because that's not going to be developing my skill. Um, and to some degree, like there are areas where, yeah, you want to do it the hard way because it'll train you to
Hmm.
develop your skill more. But for this, it's like, yeah, I probably could have drawn it this way without the reference, but I would have had to draw it like 50 times until I
Hmm.
found the best angle. Whereas if I use this method, I can see all of these angles much more quickly and then find the right one. And then I can draw it in more detail. And so that really speeds up the process and it doesn't sacrifice creative control. And that's the important thing to me now. It
Yeah,
doesn't
that's cool.
sacrifice any of those creative decisions that you're putting into the artwork. It actually adds your capability to explore more options.
Hmm. I love that because I'm such a horrible artist. I mean, I'm not an artist at all, and I can't even sketch well. So sometimes when I'm trying to envision a scene, I'm just trying to like literally imagine it from different angles, and it's so hard. It doesn't work. I'm like, I wish I had the skill to do great sketches or modeling because then I would know what I want to tell the artist, but I don't have that. So I'm basically just typing or writing what I want to explain to artists. But thank God for artists, right? They know how to do that.
Oh, your storytelling more than makes up for it.
Yeah, the storytelling helps. So we got clear on the angle of the scene, what we wanted to have him do, and zero, this is positioning him where we want it on the game card, proper game card dimensions. And then we start to, well, don't let me jump too far ahead, but we basically have that line work there, and then we're getting into some coloring here. So anything you want to share with us about this stage?
Yeah, I mean, this stage right here, the previous one,
Okay.
um, yeah, if you can switch to the previous one, there you go. So there, you can see I'm drawing the anatomy underneath, but it doesn't really look great. And I'm not super concerned with that because it's enough for me to understand how he's working. Um, and now it does become relevant that he'll have clothes eventually. So I'm not going to go that extra mile to make it look perfect if it's going to get covered up, as long as I have the basic understanding there. And then as far as the outline, my process is generally to draw the outline and then draw do the colors and shading underneath the outline, and then go back in and add a layer on top of the outline and color over the outline, as well as adding in all the final details. And that's one of the big advantages of digital painting. You get to work in layers like that. It's
Mhm.
basically like if you were just painting on multiple sheets of glass and then you stack them all together and see the combination of all of them. So you're able to actually draw underneath what you've already drawn. And that's a nice thing that it's a lot more difficult with physical drawing and painting.
I don't even get that. That's new to me. So how do you draw underneath your sketch? What does that mean?
So imagine you have a piece of paper and then you have a stack of sheets of glass on top of it. Okay. So I
Uh,
take a marker, I take one of those sheets of glass and I draw on the sheet of glass. Now I can still set that sheet of glass aside
mhm.
and paint something on on another sheet of glass and then put it underneath the sheet of glass that has the outline on it.
So you mean
And so that way,
you do an outline on a piece of glass, set that one aside, then draw an illustration with color or
yeah,
sh
then paint just colors on another sheet of glass, then set the sheet of glass with the outline on top of the sheet
okay.
of
So
glass
you
with the
just
color.
mean like colors, not necessarily drawing the
Yeah,
guy, and then you put the
right, right. The difference between the analogy and what I'm actually doing in digital painting is I can paint underneath the outline
I
at the
see.
same time as I'm
Yeah,
seeing the outline.
I see what you mean. Yeah, so the outline is there and you're painting color or whatever you want to see, and then you could just the layer is going to be behind that sketch layer.
Yeah, yeah. So the outline is what's informing where I put the color,
That's cool. Yeah, that's really neat.
but there's no risk of painting over the outline.
Yeah, that's really cool. Yeah, that's new for me. So this green one is, I mean, is that green color, is that underneath the outline then, or was that on top or
So that is actually on top
okay.
because I didn't want the outline of the anatomy to be showing
Oh
through
yeah,
the
yeah.
clothing. So
Okay.
that's on top, but it was a layer that it's a separate layer, which means I can remove it later. And
Yeah,
we actually did a bunch of different tests of
yeah.
different clothing,
I think I got
and
some of those different colors coming.
yeah, I can do all those tests without ruining the outline. I can do
Mhm,
those tests, then just
mhm.
throw away whichever ones I don't like and keep whichever one I do like.
So here is this like a sketch layer now? What would you call this covering the anatomy here? Covering the text?
So yeah, this was an updated outline. I
Okay.
What I probably did for this one was I probably just duplicated the layer that had the outline of Zunvo on it, and
Hmm.
then just erased all of the parts that would have been under the clothing and drew the clothing on top of it.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
but I still have that duplicate. And so if I had wanted to go back to the original outline with the anatomy and stuff, if this
Yeah,
sketch didn't look good for some reason, I could still just delete this sketch and go back to the other one.
cool. Got that. So now you're sort of like roughing in colors for all the scenery around him. Um,
Yeah. Yeah. So this is sort of analogous to what I was talking about earlier with the thumbnails, except this is with colors. So you can see it's just a very sort of blurry background that I have there, and I really just want to see sort of the lighting and the values. Like, does this look okay? And
mhm.
then I'll go in later and add detail. And we actually well, okay, it was a different image, but I actually sent you an image that wasn't really working. It was just a very low detail forest, and it didn't really look how we wanted it to look. And so we changed it up and switched to this image, but
Uh,
it only lost like 20 minutes of my work instead of
mhm,
5 hours. So
mhm.
that's part of the process doing those tests.
Yeah, I vaguely remember that. I think we wanted to brighten things up with the grass and trees, and maybe they were like pine trees
That
before,
sounds right.
switched to like the white birch and like brighter greens and something
Yeah,
like that.
I think I had these dark green pines, and it was just a very,
Here's
very
another
yeah.
one.
That's
Maybe
it.
that's it.
Actually,
Yeah.
that's the one.
Well, yeah, this is all part of the experimentation here. And so that was another thing that you came through with. But eventually, maybe we were contemplating which one to go with, and then we went with the lighter, brighter one.
Yeah,
So here's kind of a big jump in the
yeah,
process here. Basically, we're
yeah,
coming to the end of
yeah.
the line here. I didn't show every single image you sent me, but we're kind of coming down to the end of the process here.
Right. And during all of the steps prior to this big jump that just happened, we would communicate back and forth a lot because there's a lot of creative decisions that you can be involved in, right? There's a lot of stuff like, I'd ask you, is this overall coloring? Does this look pretty good to you? Does this clothing design look good to you? But then once we've got all that nailed down, um, there's a lot of time that I spend just filling in all the little details. And
Hmm.
that's not something that I, need your feedback on nearly as much. It's very time consuming, but it doesn't require as much of your feedback. I do think that for me, every brushstroke is a creative decision.
Hmm.
Like the way that the aspen trunks there are just a little bit shiny. There's so many ways I could have done that differently, and so it does affect the final image. But that's the part where I just put on an audiobook and just put in a couple days of work and get it
Yeah,
done.
I just love all the detail, and I hope people really appreciate it. And I hope we can see all of it on the final game card. There's a good chance we can see
We
it. If
won't be able to.
yeah, I mean, the thing is, I'm going to be saving these artworks so people can appreciate it. And like videos like this, they're going to be able to see it, and we're talking about it. Now, on the game card, it's harder if you don't pay attention, but I think because you work in quite a high resolution, so I think they'll be able to see like there's some tattoos on his hands, there's some little
Mhm.
buttons on his apparel,
Yeah,
he's got a necklace, the water lilies, little mushrooms, there's a squirrel up there. There's
yeah.
so much detail in here, so I just really want people to appreciate it. And I forgot to say this at the top of the video. I was meaning to say this that I really like one thing that I really appreciate about your style is you can really feel there's life in it. It feels very natural and very alive. There's very good energy. And that's one thing that I rarely have felt with AI. I've seen a lot of the AI stuff and it kind of always feels flat. It doesn't have like feeling inside of it. And when I looked at all of your artworks, that's always there. So I think that's the human element in the artwork coming through. The art really feels alive. It really feels natural.
Thanks. Yeah,
Yes.
it's hard to define what is the human
Yeah.
element
Yeah.
in a
What is
piece of
that
artwork.
thing?
But I think if you take enough time, look at enough AI generated pieces of artwork and enough human generated pieces of artwork, like it's not always easy to tell for an individual piece was this AI or human. But if
Mhm.
overall, like once you add all the pieces together, there's a really distinct difference.
Mhm. Now, the last few images here is when we kind of put the card stuff on. So Gabriel, he knows the game card template I designed very well. So he knows the dimensions, he knows where the game text is going to be, and that's why zoom's where he's supposed to be. The focal point is kind of usually on the right side of the game card because there's a lot of words on the left side. So this is how it looks on the finished game card, and it's probably going to have a black border on the final card. So that's basically how it's going to look. And the text isn't 100% yet, but it's, 90% certain, sort of with the game word categories and the rules. But that's basically how we do it. So it's a great collaboration, but obviously it wouldn't be so incredible without fantastic artwork like Gabriel can do. And you can look forward to seeing Zune in the second edition of the game. I've got a playlist where I'm putting my game design updates for heading into Language Land 2. There's a playlist for it on the homepage of my YouTube channel. So there's going to be more videos like this one where we chat with artists and show you all the conceptualization that goes into it and how long it takes. I put out Heading into Language Land 1 in 2023, and a few months before the end of that, I had already been writing the story for Heading into Language Land 2. And so I just kept going basically. And since 2023, I've been working on the second edition of the game. So we've got about 20 artwork pieces already, many of them by Gabe, and we're just going to keep going. I hope within about 2 years or so, the next edition can be done. But if you want to get artwork done from Gabe for your own reasons or for this game, because we can design your own game card too and bring your character to life and put it in the game, then you should contact Gabe. Again, your website, Schwepler Art,
Yep.
schweplerart.com. Is that right?
SchweplerArt.com.
Okay, cool. And we'll put that in the description of the video. Gabriel, thanks so much for doing this interview. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Matt.
Bye bye, guys. Thanks for watching.